I'm sure many people have had the urge to put together a shambling horde of undead robot skeletons, so hopefully we can help you with this in this video. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about getting a 40k collection together for the forces of the Undying Necrons. We've been doing a fair bit of Necron strategy videos on the channel, but today I thought we'd take a bit of a more general overview and talk about some of the things that you can consider when you're putting together a collection of Necrons. A few general good principles when you're buying 40k miniatures, and then go on to talk about which kits I think are the best value and might be best for someone starting out with a new collection. So why would you collect Necrons in 40k then? First of all, their lore is pretty epic, an ancient deathless civilization who swapped their flesh to become soulless automatons and used their new power to bring down the very gods that made this happen. In 40k as it stands today, some of the Necron fluff is really quite compelling, with undying hordes of robot zombies arising from tomb worlds that the Imperium did not suspect contained any alien activity, in a bloody purge to reclaim their empire and destroy the lesser races. Necrons are in a very good spot in 40k at the moment. Games Workshop have basically made them the poster boy antagonists for Space Marines in the new edition, and they've released about the biggest number of kits for any one race at one time, with around 18 or 19 new miniatures or updated model kits. They've had a really nice range refresh, and the sculpts look really nice in my opinion. In game they have some pretty cool mechanics, and a fair amount of flexibility between decent shooting and now a lot more decent melee options as per the new kits. I think that reanimation protocols is one of the most fun Necron rules, where basically your Necron warriors will get up once they've been shot down, particularly with things like resurrection orbs or technomancers, which again can have your Necron warriors rising to fight once more once they were already dead. The new rules for the Catan shards are really quite interesting as well. They're very powerful pieces in game, and really are threats that the opponent can't ignore. There's plenty of option with choosing what style of Necron army to play. You can go for a predominantly ranged or predominantly melee strategy, or a mix of both. You can build around certain powerful centerpiece models such as Catan, the Silent King or a Monolith. You can use a bit of a Silver Tide type strategy with phalanxes of warriors slowly advancing towards the enemy, being very hard to kill and well supported by powerful characters. There are many more options for Necron destroyers, meaning that you can have a destroyer cult as an army a lot more easily than before, and you can even get a bit of a mechanized Necron force on the go using things like Doomsday Arcs and Ghost Arcs, and there are other vehicle options such as Doomstalkers, Catacomb Command Barges, and plenty of others. I think Necrons are a bit more flexible than some armies in terms of choosing a dynasty and colour scheme. Whereas everyone might know a Blood Angel Space Marine from an Ultramarine just by the colour scheme alone, that's not really the case for the Necron dynasties, and you've got a lot more flexibility with just painting them exactly how you like, and then use whichever rules best suit your fluff or game style when you're actually playing. You can think about going for one of the named dynasties though if you want. They really can give you some different and fun styles of playing Necrons. The Novok dynasty is really interesting for really souping up melee units. They can be absolutely murderous with boosted charges and extra AP. Mefrit is a great choice for shooty Necrons, again giving them extra AP at close range and also a bit longer range on their guns in general. And the custom Necron dynasties are really quite powerful indeed, allowing you to mix and match certain powerful traits, and also get some very powerful combos on the go, such as getting a pre-game move and also having objectives secured on every single model to steal objectives from your enemy. When you are thinking about establishing a colour scheme, I think about painting up a few test models before we go farming it out on an entire army. When collecting Warhammer 40k, there's a few general things that I like to keep in mind. Firstly, I think it's typically more sensible to collect in a few small jumps of a few kits at a time, and for getting a force together, I start with the troops and HQ choices so you can actually field detachments, and also think about just getting anything that you find really fun. Just because it might not be the best first option to get to paint up the Catan shard of the Void Dragon doesn't necessarily mean it's the worst idea if it's really going to inspire you, and that model is one of the main reasons that you want to collect the faction. I'd also think about picking up the Necron Codex nice and early, just so you know the rules and intricacies of the army. It's been very recently released, so it's not like to go out of date for quite a while now. If you don't have the Codex yet though, you can still mess around with points costs and lists on things like Battlescribe or Warhapedia. When buying models, a lot of the time the simplest way is direct from Games Workshop, but I would consider second-hand miniatures, which there will be some of on the internet. You'll typically find more of the older style Necron models there, but you really can get some quite good discounts if you don't necessarily mind having a bit less flexibility with how the models are assembled. If you've got discount retailers in your area as well, I'd personally strongly consider using them over Games Workshop, just because you get the exact same models at a very slightly discounted rate, such as the excellent Element Games in the UK, who typically have 10 to 20% off Games Workshop products, and I do have a link for them down in the video description that helps to support the channel. I'd also be thinking about the power of the actual units in game as well, but always bear in mind that rules and points cost can change, so I'd be very wary about picking up a set of miniatures that I didn't like the look of or didn't like the feel of, just literally for the amount of power that they have in game. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about some actual kits that you could pick up for the Necrons. Firstly, I would be aware of the Indomitors box. I'm sure most people watching this will be aware, but that was the big Necron and Space Marine starter box for 9th edition that gave you some pretty crazily good discounts on the models compared with buying them separately, though sadly no longer produced by Games Workshop. The fact that so many of these sold quite recently does mean that there's a ton of these kits going online though, and it can be a really decent way to pick up a lot of Necrons at a discount on the internet. On eBay, the Indomitors half of the Necrons is going for £65 to £70 at the moment, which honestly, with the sheer amount of kits that you get in this, is about the best deal that you're going to get on Necrons virtually anywhere. You get a ton of troops and characters with this, and it's a very cheap way to get lots and lots of points of Necrons on the table on a budget. A real shame that Games Workshop didn't keep on producing this one. It would have been very helpful for Space Marine and Necron collectors. Unfortunately, Necrons don't have a start collecting box of their own, so the next best options that are actually sold at the moment are the Recruit and Elite starter sets. You can see the contents of the Recruit starter set here. For the Necrons you get 10 Warriors, 3 Scarabs and a Royal Warden, and that one costs £32.50, and you also get some Space Marines thrown in. If you wanted the new kits not via a third party or eBay, then this will be my next best choice. Getting a character, a Troops Choice and a small fast attack for only £32 or $50 is really not a bad deal whatsoever. And if you can, I'd try and find a Space Marine player to split it 50-50 with. That way you're getting all of these miniatures at a very, very good price. Here we have the Elite Edition starter set, which is £65 or $99 US. This one you still get the 10 Warriors and the Scarabs, but you swap out the Royal Warden for a slightly more useful Overlord, and you get some Scorpec Destroyers as well. Again, if you can find a Space Marine player to split the box with, then it's fantastic value, and I would strongly consider this as a first step. I quite like the difference in characters between the Recruit and the Elites box, as it does mean that you have a decent reason to pick up both of these, as Necron Warriors and Scarab Swarms are both units that you could have multiples of. I have mentioned this in other videos, but if you are thinking about picking up Necron Warriors, there's really no reason to ever buy the actual box of Necron Warriors, buy the Recruit Edition set instead. It only costs about £3 more, and you get the extra character included, never mind all the Space Marines. With the Necron Warriors in these boxes, you will have the option of choosing Gauss Flayers or Gauss Reapers for them, which is actually a reasonably big decision. I have made a Necron Warriors tactics video recently, which you might be interested in if you want to see a bit more of that discussion. But in general, I think that Gauss Flayers might be a little bit better for if you're moving up as a slow-moving infantry phalanx, and the Reapers are generally a bit better as high-power damage dealing if you're jumping out of transports or using Veil of Darkness to jump across the board or something. In any case, from one of those two starting points, you should have a fairly decent core of the army, with a decent amount of warriors and a character or two to lead them into battle. From there you can add some of the other fun Necron units that deal a lot of damage, particularly anything that inspires you in terms of looks or lore that you really want to have in the army, but I'd also consider some decent heavy firepower units to augment those warriors. In particular, the starter sets have very little in the way of anti-heavy or anti-tank firepower, so some pretty reasonable choices are things like Canoptek Doomstalkers, Doomsday Arcs or Locust Heavy Destroyers, just so you've at least got some power to remove enemy heavies at range. I'm really quite a big fan of the Necron Doomstalker that you can see here. For a recent Games Workshop release, it's really quite cheap point for point, and I like the War of the Worlds style vibe that it gives off. From where you go next will depend on what sort of Necron lists you're trying to build, whether you're trying to drown the enemy in melee units with Novok, or shoot them to bits with Nefrek, or take them off objectives with Nihilak, but there are a bunch of units that I think are just a bit stronger than the others. The Catan Shards are all really powerful at the moment. Their Necrodermis special rule will largely keep them safe from enemy shooting, and you won't be able to deal with them efficiently that way. And in particular, the Catan Shard of the Nightbringer will go through near enough anything in melee on top of that. The model might be a bit dated and is unfortunately made of resin, but it's quite cheap from Games Workshop and gets you a lot of Necron points on the table. Certainly a very quick way of building up a lot of points into a Necron list and making the list stronger as a result too. Ghost Arcs and Doomsday Arcs are both pretty strong on the table right now. Very tough, and either as a transport or a massive gun platform, they'll give you some decent value. I would bear in mind though that the kits aren't the easiest to put together with lots of fiddly bits. Warriors and Scarabs are usually something that you can always have more of. Again, I think about picking them up via the Recruit box, and because you get both a troops and a fast attack unit, it means they're fairly decent value in terms of money for points on the table, as well as being pretty strong. You could think about a squad or two of Immortals to camp some backfield objectives, more Scorpec Destroyers to act as pressing melee threats, maybe a Chronomancer when he's out from Games Workshop, who combines very nicely indeed with Warriors to give them a 5+ invul save, and I'd think about a big unit of powerful elites that you can build some strategies around, such as Lich Guard or Triarch Praetorians, who maybe could use Veil of Darkness to jump across the board and start smashing up the enemy with powerful melee. I think for the most part Games Workshop has done fairly well at balancing the Necron army, though a few units are certainly a bit underwhelming for what they cost at the moment. The Monolith is a bit underwhelming as it's been relegated to a Lord of War. The Hexmark Destroyer just doesn't do loads for its points despite looking very cool, and Canoptic Reanimators and Plasmancers are just a bit overcosted points wise for what they bring to the table right now. In general though, the majority of Necron units are fairly usable in game. So just to quickly round off, here could be one example of how you could get a Necron force together. Maybe start with a copy of the Recruit and Elite boxes, split 50-50 with a Space Marine player, pick up the Necron Codex, and maybe get a fun model that you really like the look or feel of. As I said, I think that Canoptic Doomstalker looks quite cool. That'd be £105 or $165 for about 750 points worth of Necrons, plus also the rulebook to play them when you're on the table. When you've got those guys painted up and have got a few games under your belt, maybe expand with a few other things. I think if I were playing Necrons, I would pick up the Nightbringer just because of how scary he is, while also being pretty cheap from Games Workshop, though I would mention that he seems to be currently out of stock right now, so hopefully they'll get some back in at some point soon. I'd perhaps pick up a Ghost Dart to transport some Necrons closer to the battle, and then maybe think about a bit of Cryptek support such as a Technomancer. Another £75 or $127 for that lot, not quite as good value as the starter sets, but that's really starting to get a Necron army underway now, and you're up to 1300 points worth of stuff and have some decently scary threats on the table. So I hope that's been of some help. If you've got any other thoughts or tips when starting a Necron army, then feel free to leave them down below for us. I'll most certainly look forward to having a read. If you've enjoyed the video and you'd like to see some more Necron strategy related content, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where we'll have plenty more coming over the next few weeks. Finally, if you've been enjoying my videos and you'd like to help support the channel, I would just like to mention the Element Games affiliate link, which I have down in the video description. As I touched on earlier, Element Games is a discount retailer in the UK, usually giving 10 to 20% off Warhammer models, so it can be a good way to save some money while also supporting the channel. If you click that link and order something through them, then it doesn't cost you any more whatsoever, but a small amount of the money goes to help support Auspex Tactics, so it can just be a way to help support the channel with any models that you were thinking about ordering in anyway. In the USA and Canada, I do have a very similar Amazon affiliate link. That one works in pretty much the exact same way. Click on the link and buy basically anything through Amazon whatsoever, whether Warhammer or something completely different, and a small amount of money goes to help support Auspex Tactics without costing you any more at all. A big thank you to everyone who has been using those links, it really does help justify me making this amount of videos. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.